Yeah, I was about to say now for something completely different, because from what you have heard so far, you get the big picture of what we are trying to do, what we aim to do. So I'm giving you an example from this region, and we have two cases, tentative. Might work with both of them. And this is one of them. I won't tell you about both. Forgotten Saami Landscapes, reviving hidden stories. Yes, we have an enormous number of forgotten landscapes, meaning cultural landscapes, landscapes with stories. And the stories are hidden because the landscapes are forgotten. So how can they be so forgotten, or is it the other way? Who knows? Just in case you don't know where you are, this is us and this area. We are having a 3-year project called DACCHE, the middle land, the land in the middle. And that land actually stretches from like this. The name is in South Sami, of course, because we're talking about Saami landscapes and in a Sami context. This project is in collaboration with the DACCHE Foundation here in the Östersund, which is also the project owner. The area of DACCHE, as far as we know, has been a place for reindeer herding, with where the reindeers and the Sami could freely move across the border between Sweden and Norway. So in certain years, the people, the families would be here, sometimes as long as out here by the coast, and some other years they went to this part. Because reindeer herding is, of course, extremely depending on weather and climate, of course. So in the summer, or I should say spring, summer, and early autumn, they will be up in the mountain region for grazing. And in the winter, when there's too much snow, they go a bit further down into the forest. But there was this great land reform in Sweden in the 1830s, where the state, the government, decided to divide the land between private and the state. And one of the reasons was to give lots of land to farmers and settlers, in basically to increase population and increase tax revenue. But they did not give any consideration to the fact that there were living people in this area that were living a different kind of life, reindeer herders, Sami families. So they suddenly found out that they did not have any land anymore, and they were paying taxes before for the certain mountain areas. They paid yearly taxes for not owning the land, but paying to the state to be able to use it as their grazing land. That was taken away. So in the 1880s, there was a new law in Sweden in order to reform the reindeer herding and the Sami way of life. It didn't actually get much better. And we have a number of laws and regulations about reindeer herding from the most relevant comes from the 18th century, middle of 18th century. So what happens then next that affects people? Yes, the border between Sweden and Norway is closed. Sweden and Norway was in a union until 1905. And after 1905, there were strong regulations that no, you cannot move to Norway as freely as you have done. And in 1922, the border crossing grazing stopped completely. Leading to that, some families had to abandon the area and some had to abandon the life of reindeer herders. Not all of them, but quite a lot. Those who were given land here as private land, they sold much of their land to a couple of 3 or 4 really rich and wealthy people that wanted the land for the mountains for fishing and hunting. So they bought enormous masses of land. And they did not want no Sami people, no farmer people up in the mountains. So they more or less cleared it from people. This led to unintentionally, I should say, that it's a sort of laboratory, this area, because if we find something from the Sami way of living, we know that this is at least 140 years old, because they were not allowed to build constructions, you know, like pens, corrals, and things like that, and have their houses. In English it's called Sami hut, I think. In Swedish we say kåta, and in South Sami it's gottje. No, nothing like that. So I'm pretty certain that we are looking at sites that are considerably old, and being of that age, they are from the early way of keeping reindeers, smaller herds, and are primarily for milking the reindeer. Of course, you would take this occasional reindeer for meat, but basically it was for milking. And that period of milking the reindeers lasted from, as far as we know now, from around the Viking period, 1000 AD, 1050, something like that. We have traced from early reindeer herding in this area. It changes around 100 years ago, 120 years ago, where people start having larger flocks of reindeer and moving on to meat production. So this is an area filled with remains from the earlier way of keeping reindeer, a life that does not anymore exist. But the life living with reindeers, of course, exists, but it's a different way of living. So yeah, of course, this is interesting as a place, an area to investigate. But I shall take you through some pictures showing what we are doing, how we are doing it, and what we are finding, because we will end up with a landscape that I think would be really interesting getting into this project. Well, this is obvious, a landscape. And of course, walking in this landscape, yes, it's very bright in here, but here you can see a bit of clearing. That one is very old. So people used to live here. It's a very good place to live in. And of course, I couldn't do this by myself. Have to be more people. No matter how brilliant I think I am, I know nothing about these landscapes, really. I learn a lot each year, but I have to work with the people that know the landscape, and who knows the landscape, well, the people who live there, and the people who have been reindeer herders for all their life. So the initiative to this project is really from discussions that I and a man have had we started 23 years ago, talking about we should really do something about it. He partly grew up here, so his family goes way back in history as reindeer herders. He knows the landscape, and he can also say, if I come there and say, well, this would be a good place, and he says, no, it won't. Okay, now maybe it won't, but I think the reindeers would come. No, they won't. They would come there, not there. But of course they wouldn't come there. He explains to me, I understand a little bit by bit, but you have to have a complete life living in this to understand the landscape correctly. So it goes without saying, actually, any kind of project like this must be conducted in close collaboration with the local community. In this case, the local community is the Sami people and the reindeer herders. It's their story, actually. So I have to know what's their interest in this kind of project, what aims and goals are there, and whose story is going to be told, and how is it going to be told. And we also have the question, who owns the story and who owns the initiative. You could argue that it's more important in this case because we have this strong history of a strong colonial story behind this. So in this case, we are finding lots of stories worth to be told, and what lies ahead now is finding the best way to tell these stories, because there are many ways to tell a story. So the family I was talking about, they lived here. It's about 150 years ago. And how come we're sure about that? Well, because there was a drawing like this from the 23rd of July 1868. A Swedish ethnographer, Nils Månsson Mandelgren, he actually was up here in these mountains, interviewing people, making drawings of how they lived and things like that. And he also made a note about who lived exactly here. It was Morten Larsson and his wife Maria Sofia Danielsdotter. He was a really good ethnographer, making these sketches are really accurate, and he also is very early in using the proper South Sami names for different structures and yeah, everything. As soon as he had a South Sami name for something, he would write it down. And the reason why we could locate this is because what looked first like just some sketchy depiction of average mountains in the background, they are exactly the background of the mountain. So the guy I'm working with, we were out with in the helicopter, he had this drawing, oh, it must be here. And it was, we could find the place. That is one thing. We also have some help with photos. This is an early photo, is from 1890. The family is extended family of Anders Larsson. It's a brother of the person that was on the previous sketch. The reason we have so much material here is that we have two main roads between Sweden and Norway here, and the railway comes in the 1880s, crossing the border. So it was a place for early tourism. And with the tourists came photographers and came artists and things like that. So we have quite a good, really good number of sources. It's the same with this. Here there is a small river, small rapids in this small river, and you can see, not too bright here maybe, but I assure you can see the line of the horizon, and with little help we found exactly that place. And you might think that why is this so important? Well, look at this. We are looking for areas that are central for reindeer herding and Sami life in this area, because we want to find places that we can put further in, looking at not only the depth of time. We are radiocarbon dating lots of stuff as we speak from these areas, depth of time, and also as many traces of different activities you can find in this area or around here. Because what you look at here is all of this is a major place where for reindeer herding, where people have lived. We have been doing a survey here, and this is one of the places that we have been looking for. We have maybe 2 or 3 places of particular interest, and they are larger, quite well-defined areas with clear grazing impact and with small overgrown reindeer corrals and storage pits. And in all of these areas, we have found several of these hearths. How do you pronounce it? Where you have your fire. In this area, for example, just in here, in one day, we found 50 of them. And they have been inside these huts, many of them made out with cloth from wool. It's not always that easy. Here, for example, this is very typical. So what we see is small changes in vegetation. The grass is slightly greener, and the birches here, they are about the same age. So this means very clearly it's different here from there. This is what we would call a reindeer corral for milking the reindeer. It has been abandoned. I don't know. at least 150 years, maybe 200 years, maybe a little longer. We have quite a good variation of corals from different periods. Because when you leave this one, you keep the reindeers in here. It's quite small. They run, and the soil gets open, the grass is away, so you have to abandon it because you are afraid of parasites and any kind of disease that will affect the reindeers. So leave it and let it grow again. And since it has been fertilized so much, you instantly get a lot of grass and birches. And this is maybe it's a third stage of birch retaking an abandoned corral. You can see that because first there will be these small birch bushes, like you can't almost walk through them. They will grow up and some of them will die because some of the bigger ones will take over. And so on. You can see this sort of cycle in these places. And this is typical when it's very easy to see where the fireplace had been. The grass, you can see it. This is something different and that is something different. And the stones in the hearth can be up to 3 decimeters under the ground level. They are so overgrown. So in ideal conditions, depending on what time of the year and how the spring and summer has been, you can see them more or less clearly like this, a bit more green grass. So we cannot just go around register green grass. So we actually have this earth probe or a small spade to see, are there any stones with coal on them? Can we find coal or soot in the ground? And we normally do. And then we have coal for radiocarbon dating. In the landscape, we also have this, caves and shelters. You need to have caves and shelters of some kind when you're out tending to your reindeers. Because they are moving more or less freely, but you have to look after them. There would be wolves and anything. At the top there, you can see something small, and that is a small place of sacrifice, probably one that is for one person or one family, because they are different. There are those that are more private, and then there are those that are more public for maybe the whole community. And these are quite common. They're not big, like this maybe, and this high. Not always easy to see, and you can mistake national things like overgrown stones and like that. But if you look closer at them and know what to look for, you can see that we have quite a lot of these places. So moving on to this is maybe showing actually quite clear what we are looking for. This is the summer land. Here it's wet, you have the mountains, but here there are birches and there is some green grass all over this. We do not have any monumental structures in these landscapes, apart from the landscape itself, of course. We are looking at the vegetation actually, and where the vegetation is different in a different place. So you can't just go around and say, oh, this is green grass here, they must have lived. No, it's not that easy, unfortunately. But that would have been very strange. But this we have it's lots of remains in this place. The same goes for this one. It's more easy to understand. Of course, if they lived here, they must have lived here on that ridge. So that is where we will go and look for them. Anything. And then knowing that all of these structures, they are maybe flat, you see nothing, maybe 1 decimeter high, in a landscape that is naturally kind of curvy and bumpy. So you cannot use a lot of modern technology. None, I should say. We've been trying with UV photos and LiDAR and things like that. You see absolutely nothing. It's impossible. So you have to do it the old way. Get out there and walk and look. So here's the person I'm working with, Jan Persson. He's standing in one of these storage pits or earthen cellars, if you like, because the reindeer milk it's really very fat. Making butter, making cheese. We can also preserve it for a whole year in a wooden keg, put it in one of these pits, cover it with some turf, some birch bark and stone, and the next year you leave this area when the winter comes, and in May, when the reindeers are having their calves, they go up to the mountains. So when following them, you would have a storage of food, a supply of food already in place. And this milk was perfect to eat, and very strong food, they describe it as. So this is something of what and I mean, these pits, that is the only thing that is really easy to see. The rest are not. So this is an old photograph. I haven't been to this place for many years now, and I had to look in my own archives when Kevin asked me for a case. But here we have clear evidence of a Sami dwelling that goes all the way back to the Viking period, 1,000 years old. It's been excavated, and not all of it, of course, but some structures, like the remains of a house, this round house, and also pollen analysis from the moors around here. So we have quite a good, we know, I don't know, can you say that you have a good control? No, you cannot. But we know quite a lot about the change in the vegetation and climate for the last 1,000 years that we were primarily interested in, but we still have this core of sample core we can look further into, but we can follow how this landscape has changed. And this is not far away from the next place where we have reindeer herding or Sami activity for the last 1,000 years, last 1,500 years. So this is definitely a place. It's no longer forgotten, and its story is no longer hidden. Of course, it's not easy to tell this story for everybody, but that's no reason for not trying, because these kind of stories are extremely important to tell. I should say that, are there any kind of stories that are important to tell right now? Is the stories about early Sami life. That's really important because they are still to such a great extent hidden, and the landscapes are forgotten. We now have 1, 2, 3 examples of landscapes that are carrying these wonderful stories, and they have never been told to a broader public. Otherwise than me standing like this talking to you, or me standing talking to some other people in some other situation, but that's not enough. This is also an area with Åre. Lots of tourists in this area. Lots of hotels and tourist destination. Well, that could be a great place to tell the story for the people that are coming here. Let them know what this landscape is. Okay, maybe not all will go up here. That doesn't matter. It's not necessary. We want to show the place, the history of the landscape. We do not want 50,000 people stomping around here. Of course not. That was not the idea. So I don't know. Can be a challenge. Of course, it's a challenge, but it's one well worth taking. Thank you. from me and John.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was just going to ask, how would you like to share these sites? To be there, to bring this site somewhere else, or just being alive in, the internet, but maybe it's a mix of everything. I don't know. If you could imagine.
I think it would be a mix of a lot of things. And then again, we are very early, so we haven't really discussed it with the local people here. What would you like? Well, they do not want 50,000 people, of course, but I don't want that either. Nobody wants that.
No.
But we have to find so many ways, different ways to tell a story, because it's such an important story. And I don't have any preferences.
Thinking of the story we heard from Iceland and shifting climate, and hearing the stories this morning with floods, mud, the tree line is going to change probably in the mountains around here. Is it going to be harder to find these places?
Yeah.
They're hidden already, right?
They are hidden already, and it's getting more and more difficult because they will grow over more and more and more. But they are extremely resilient, because if we find a fireplace that is 1,000 years old, it looks exactly the same as one that is 100 years old. That is strange, because they create this kind of own ecosystem with grass, and it starts growing and becomes earth. And strange enough, you get this colony of worms. They kind of invade the place and then live there in their own kind of community. That's strange.
That is strange. That's strange.
But it is getting more difficult, since reindeer herding is extremely depending on the climate, not on the weather, but the climate. So it's changing as well, because we have very little or very few of these snow patches that stays all year long in Jämtland now, and they are necessary for the reindeer during summer.
Well, the more effort we need to put into this project, I guess.
Yes.
Right. So lucky that we're here. Thank you. Which now brings us